Hey, Cary, it's great to have you on this new episode of Off the Record. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's great to have you. I will let you introduce yourself as you're coming on. I just got to say, Cary is one of the luminaries who has done really a bit of everything. And when it comes to media, advertising, leading strategy across the agency, brand, and technology sides. And think what I've loved about our relationship is that you have so much very clear, no fluff, and results oriented wisdom. And that's been a source of wisdom to me for, I think it's fair to say, many years at this point. So excited to record it for the first time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And of course, I have been a huge fan of Waymarks for many years. And because Waymark has just been very early to the game in terms of AI and dynamic video for sure. But you asked me to introduce myself. So I am Cary Tilds. Currently, I'm the general manager of local at Mountain. And at Local, I lead the development and implementation of a comprehensive growth strategy and operational plan for local advertising. And before Mountain, my career really began in local merchant marketing a really long time ago, where I really became an expert in search marketing. And after that, I actually started the search practice for PhD, Omnicom's agency. And after that, I subsequently was recruited and worked at GTB. It was called Team Detroit at the time, here in Metro Detroit for Ford Motor Company, leading digital media operations in the very tough years of 2007, 2010. We're very glad those are behind us, serving and supporting Ford Motor Company. And then I rose to lead digital media for Mindshare North America, across many kinds of clients, not just auto. Think clients like Unilever, Kimberly-Clark, Target, American Express, Burger King, Royal Caribbean, lots of different verticals. Following that time, I was the Chief Innovation Officer for quite some time for Group M. And then I was able to come home to Michigan and work as the head of corporate strategy for Ford Direct, where I really served and supported the Tier 3 community back to my local roots, helping transform the advertising and data strategy there. And then I went to a startup. I wanted to work at a startup. And of course, Waymark was a startup a while, still is a startup. And I really wanted to go back to the roots of building. And so I worked at an intrinsic in-game ad tech company called FramePlay, pre-Series A. And I wore a lot of hats as the Chief Strategy and Operations Officer for that. But I'm really most proud of basically growing the brand from zero recognition to where it is today. I'm a skilled strategist, but also an operator. And you're right, I really like to just cut through the clutter and try to provide clarity in chaos, organization and fragmentation, and a path forward as we cross the chasm from one place to another. So that's me.
It's wonderful, clear and concise as always, and we'll continue to follow that theme here, I'm sure. And there's a ton of stuff that I want to follow up on. I think both the kind of fact that you've covered the gamut on types of brands as well as worked in every part that pre-series A life is, it's pretty wild. But I think first thing I'd love to hear your thoughts on are having covered like everything in digital, also some in traditional, being on the technology side and going from the early days of search to today. What are you seeing maybe recently is really the biggest shift that you've noticed in the way that brands are connecting with their consumers?
Yeah, for sure. Some would answer that question using maybe a particular technology, which is totally appropriate. Obviously, you could point to Google's technology. Actually, there were search engines well before that, but the fact that they were able to operationalize it at scale. You could point out the fact that mobile was the biggest shift. Some people do that because even though the computer predated the mobile phone, it was really mobile that put compute power into people's hands. And then, of course, the advent of social, the advent of texting, the advent of having people be able to take photographs or videos in real time and have it available right then, that compute on the go. And there's just the list goes on. But my answer actually is the shift is that entire generations learned how to interface with compute devices throughout their entire life.
Mhm.
And I think that's the shift, is the human shift to understanding how to engage with a digital device or digital devices.
Mm.
Uh, so I would say that's it.
Wow. Yeah, that is massive. And it seems like it's even still developing. As I know, my generation is very mobile and digital first, but also still didn't have a phone as early as the youngest people do now. So, how are you seeing that translate into changes in actual behavior and how brands have to act?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a tendency to assume that everybody is digital, everybody is the same level of digital
Mm.
savvy, and that's just not the case. Now, we've all learned about digital, we've all shifted to digital devices, but our generational impact, our generational knowledge is certainly very different. And so when you're thinking about how to leverage digital to help impact from a brand perspective, certainly I think there are massive generational differences. But more importantly, I'm actually thinking more about the human side of things
Mm.
more, and thinking about the value that technology or no technology plays in a human's life when it comes to interacting with a brand. And I know that's like a lot to unpack in
Yeah.
itself,
No.
but I do think that's probably one of the more powerful things that we do need to kind of continue to think about.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We could go a long way on that. I'm just really interested in
Yeah.
the topic. Maybe just one more. I'll ask one more question on that because I am super interested. I'm really just interested in your own bringing that home to what you're doing today. Mountain CTV company working on the local side. How do you think about that new wave, the generational differences, that tech first approach when you do think about the traditional medium of TV, but with tech behind it?
Absolutely. So there's no doubt that there is a massive shift in TV viewing to streaming.
Hmm.
And that's definitely a generational shift.
Yep.
And if you look at any sort of data out there, you'll see that the linear side of television definitely is aging. So it's still a really powerful avenue, but it's aging. And so when you're thinking about advertising and you're a local advertiser and you're so used to advertising with your local TV station or your rep, even with radio in that case, it's important to understand how the demographics have changed. And it's important to understand how the demographics have changed with CTV
Hmm.
viewership. And so we don't say it's an or, we say it's an and. You definitely can still, leverage television in many ways, but you should be adding CTV to your mix simply because of the way in which the generations actually engage with the content and know how to engage with the content. As obviously, as you had mentioned already, as they skew younger, they grew up this way. There's nothing different for them to go and look for a piece of content on CTV versus social media versus something else. It's just very natural. And the data suggests that. So at Mountain and with the work that I'm doing, I'm thinking about how do I bring that to local? How do I bring that to the broadcast station groups? How do I bring that to the local advertisers so that they can understand the challenge and opportunity? Again, it's an and then they can access that CTV content as easily as they've accessed search and social over the years.
Yeah. And I said that was going to be my last question, but I've got one more that I'm just interested. So when you think of it, so it's all right. Again, the medium, it can look the same, but they're different audiences, is what we're talking about in some meaningful way. Do you have any, when you are talking to that broadcast group that's maybe offering both or the brand that's deciding to do both, do you have thoughts, recommendations that you would pass on to them about how to make that mix effective, maybe beyond just doing both?
For sure. And we think about this quite a bit. If you're going to do a linear buy and say you're going to create a campaign schedule,
Hmm.
and you think about the buy that you're creating and say you're buying a demo, if you think about the funnel, because there is a funnel, and you think about awareness, if you're trying to drive awareness to your organization, that's great. Part of that audience that you're reaching with that linear TV buy is going to be who you're trying to reach, which is fabulous. But part of it's not, because it's a broad reach medium.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to want to extend that awareness buy with a CTV buy that has a much more precise ability to target the demo and other audience and contextual layers that compile your audience, your targeted audience. And so just in the awareness phase of your campaign, you're going to want, in order to get the ultimate reach of the target audience that you're trying to achieve, linear alone won't do it, because it's inherent in linear that it is a broad reach medium. And when it's not addressable or not targetable, then you're just relying on content as the way to align an audience target with your brand. But the problem is, even that is not a fail-safe way to try to reach your audience. So you've got to start there. And then, of course, as you go down the funnel, the targeting that a CTV capability can provide allows you, and retargeting allows you to be able to understand if people are considering the product, can you retarget them? And of course, to measure return on ad spend at that level. So when we talk about that with broadcast groups or with the end customer, we say, listen, it is an and strategy. We do believe that there is room and the power of linear television. But as you work down through the funnel, you're going to want to lean more towards the CTV side for that performance.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that retargeting stuff in particular is so
Yeah.
powerful. It's the first thing that people typically spend on the social channels that have taken so much budget. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And we call that intent or in market. At your website, they probably have some sort of intent, and you want to capture that.
Yeah. Great. Super helpful. Thank you. I want to take some of that you're talking about around all that technology and think about how that's impacting a local in particular. Because I think part of what really excites me about CTV is that it's so much more accessible for those local businesses. So maybe just expand on that a little bit in terms of, you've worked with these global brands that we talked about. Now you're working with the local brands as well. What are you seeing in terms of technology bringing what was once reserved for the biggest brands to the local brands?
Yeah, for sure. And I did work at one of the world's largest organizations. So I remember even when I was there, but even now, in order to access some of this high quality inventory, there were two paths. The first path was you needed a seat on a platform technology in order to, which means you would get a login and you would be able to buy media that way. But that was only part of the path. You also needed to have access or leverage to this high quality content. And there's a lot of inventory. There's a lot of buying strategy that goes on. For example, in New York, not all of it, there's something called the TV upfronts. And in the past, in order to get access to these ad spots, like relative to this amazing content, which is the first part of the journey, you'd have to have a big agency or have some other way in. And if you go Google, the concept of the TV upfronts changing, you will see that there are a lot of things at play that are simply just changing the dynamics of that motion in the marketplace, whether that be what we're talking about, the dominance of CTV, whether that be talking about flexibility in buying, new metrics, other tech giants involved, less emphasis maybe on the traditional fall show.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot at play. And not only is this disrupting the national advertiser, because that's changing for them too, but the local advertiser, see, all that was happening, but they never had access to that inventory. So number one, get access to the inventory, make it easy to do that via a very intelligent platform. You don't have to have a seat and you have to know somebody to get access to the platform. It's open, it's accessible. And then the other large thing is having the AI machine learning in order to help with identification of audience targets. So you don't have to be a super genius to figure out your audiences. Let the machine do it for you. Of course, you can modify and change, but then also let it optimize for you. So you don't have to, spend the time you have running your business figuring out how to be a marketing strategist. Let the platform do that. And that's what's changing. That's what's being brought to that local advertiser and the broadcast groups as well.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, let it do it for me is a pretty compelling pitch for especially those local advertisers and businesses that just don't have the time and expertise.
And that's how search and social has helped them grow their businesses. So it's not a new concept
Totally.
for them.
Yeah.
Search and social, that's exactly how it works. So this is just bringing that to this world of really high quality content that frankly was gated before.
Yeah, actually, I'm really interested. Something that hadn't crossed my mind until you were just talking is whether the upfronts are something that local advertisers are paying attention to and aware of in terms of content and technology that's coming up. Yeah, still no.
No,
I would have said
I
no, but yeah.
no, but they don't need to now,
Yeah.
and nor did they most of the time know what they were anyway, because
Right.
it wasn't really in their realm of possibility. Their realm of possibility was the local advertising opportunities that walked in their door if they didn't have money to buy align with a big agency, and search and social, which has been incredibly, powerful for them. Those have been the choices.
Yeah.
But now we're democratizing access to this incredible content, and then we're adding that power of those other platforms they're so used to using to drive outcomes for their business.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It feels like content has never been a part of the thinking for the local advertiser. Now that it's becoming possible, start to
That's right.
mix that in, maybe even see broader
Yep.
awareness of the upfronts. I had never heard of upfronts until I actually
Yeah.
got in the industry, and it's like, wow, there's this
Yeah.
incredible huge.
Content and context.
Yeah,
Both.
exactly. Yes. And yeah, for us on the creative, the actual ad side, something that we're super excited about is
Absolutely.
actually making advertising that fits the context, makes sense in that context in a
Yes.
way that
Yes.
scales for local advertisers. So much there. Amazing. I want to switch gears a little bit just because I think it's super interesting. Frame play, you were mentioning in the gaming, intrinsic advertising in gaming. Something that I don't think comes up all that often, at least in the conversations that I'm in. So I think it's just super interesting. Everybody, I think, knows esports is huge and growing. Like, how is that actually changing the world of advertising? And is that something people aren't talking about?
So this is the thing that people think gaming and esports may be too complicated or maybe a mystery. I'm not sure what. But if you think about what we just spoke about with connected television, and we just spoke about the ability to take really high quality content and be able to place an ad in that content that really resonates with the consumer, and it makes that content more valuable. It doesn't necessarily distract from the content, although it is a commercial break. If you look at intrinsic in-game advertising first, which is a new ad format, actually places the ad inside of the game itself, meaning say you have a soccer field and the ad is alongside the field while it's being played. So it doesn't even disrupt the game at all. There's no commercial break. And the theme there is access to high quality content. And so, how do you get a game developer who's incredibly proud of developing their game and say, hey, can we put advertising in it? If you can inform them that, hey, no, we can actually make it super authentic to the gameplay experience, you're going to win. Mm-hmm. So, esports, in a similar vein, think of the parallel racing, Formula One. Mm-hmm. Formula One is more fun because of the advertising, because of the logo wear on the car and on the clothing, etc. And so for esports, I just think of it like that. You're excited, you're in that environment. It's a perfect place to bring that advertising as long, again, as it's not disruptive. Mm. But the bigger deal with gaming, especially, is the idea that it brings play and experience and story together into this incredibly high quality cinematic content.
Yeah.
And a billion people plus in the world are playing games. So I think that's why gaming is important. But what I really think is important is it's again teaching an entire generation how to engage in virtual environments, not just
Mhm.
digital environments, which is a totally different level. And there's way more to unpack there.
Yeah, we won't spend too long on it, but I am maybe just one more. I'm just interested in jumping from frame play to mountain, and you're talking about a bunch of different lessons that I think are really interesting from that frame play and gaming experience. What have you brought to mountain and to CTV that you learned from that side of the house?
Oh, geez. And it was interesting at Frame Play because it was when I joined, it was a pre-Series A
Yep.
startup. No one knew who it was. Mountain is very different. First, you have Mark Douglas, this incredible visionary CEO, and our chief creative officer is Ryan Reynolds. And then we've got people like Christopher Innes, who's our COO. There's an incredible executive team and rest of the team who have already built this brand
Mm-hmm.
and built this incredible tech. And why would they need me if they're already doing a great job? I bring that extra local flair, that idea that what got you here may not get you there.
Mm.
And what's great about this company is it's an incredibly innovative company, and it allows everybody to challenge, hey, what are we doing today and how do we do it better and quicker tomorrow? And I have all that in my background. So I add to that, but that local strategy is new.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I just have a feeling that all that thought and being steeped in how can this be so natural to the environment and
Yeah.
part of fun and play while also getting across the business objectives, that's just, I feel like an
Yes.
underdeveloped side of traditional advertising. So I think it'll be really
Yes.
interesting to see if anything comes out of that. All right, a couple more fun ones for you. I am just thinking about, you've touched on so much stuff here. You've been a part of so many different things. When you think about what's happening right now, there's all the different hype cycles in tech. What do you think are the most overhyped pieces and maybe something that isn't getting enough attention?
Overhyped. I know you sent me this question in advance, so I was thinking about
Yeah.
this. I think top contenders are metaverse,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not my answer.
Okay.
Top contender is cookie deprecation, also not my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this might be a little bit contentious.
I like it.
I think the winner is programmatic.
Tell me a little bit
I
more.
I think programmatic is overhyped. I think like eating at an all-you-can-eat buffet. But the problem is the food is more often mediocre, and you sometimes leave with a tummy ache.
I did love Old Country Buffet growing up. I know what you mean.
Yeah, maybe the only thing good about a buffet is the ice cream machine that you can make your
Yes,
own.
that's exactly right.
But I don't know if that's going to be a popular answer
Yeah,
with other
well,
people,
hey,
but I think that's the overhyped answer.
nice. Well, we're going to
The
bring you in for popular.
the underhyped
Yeah.
innovation is something I think is a really interesting topic, and this is not the phrase I coined, but extremely online culture.
Okay.
The idea of extremely online, basically, another way to say that is digital echo chambers. And while digital is powerful, we spoke about this in the beginning. I think we underhype the gap between digital and human.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what I think is underhyped.
Wow. Super interesting. We could spend another hour on that, but we'll follow up on that one.
Okay.
Um, all right. Last little nugget that I think you're particularly well positioned based on all the conversations we've had over the years. One piece of conventional wisdom in advertising that you think should be challenged or rethought.
Definitely, there are a lot of nuggets there, but if I had to pick one, I would say the conventional wisdom point I would choose is know your audience. And I really mean know your
Mm.
audience. I think this needs to be challenged now more than ever. One of the biggest things I hear from any advertiser, whether it's global, national, regional, local, is especially the local, is that they know their customers better than anyone else. And from a local perspective, that makes sense because they're super close to the customer.
Hmm.
You need to listen to your customers more than ever before. And I would say there are a lot of new ways to do that, whether you listen to online information, whether you listen to offline information or whatever. I just feel like you need to know your audience and find new ways and better ways and faster ways to know your audience.
Nice. I feel a really interesting thread of this whole conversation that I'm just processing myself here is I feel like you have both brought obviously a real focus on the digital and virtual and online experiences, while also it seems like that's really reinforced for you the importance of the human and offline experiences and not forgetting about those even as you're pushing the boundaries of what can be done online. Amazing. Thank you so much, Cary. Is there anything that I forgot to touch on that you want to hit on before we wrap up here?
I'm just very thankful for our connection and Nathan's as well, and the entire Waymark team. I've leveraged your technology at other businesses I've been at, and I'm excited for your what's to come.
Thank you so much. We're super appreciative of everything you've given us over the years, all the way through today. So thank you again. This is great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.